I growing up in Iraq, you can never compare it to what's like growing up in America, right? Because now I have a child of my own,
Yeah.
and I get to see them living completely 100% the opposite of what my life used to be, right? I mean, my daughter is 9 years old today,
Wow.
and
Wow.
4 years younger than her age. When I was 5, I was being shot at 5 years old. Where most 5 years olds here go to Toys R Us, buy a gun, have fun, enjoy their life. And it's life in Iraq was completely different because we were at war since 1980 against Iran until about 1988. So I was born in a war zone, got to see it. It was part of my natural environment. War was just your reality every single day. And every time the war took a different phase, it just got uglier and uglier. I mean, the war against Iran was in the front lines and the borders. You really didn't get to see much in the cities growing up
Okay.
until about Desert Storm hit. And
Okay.
that's when the American troops entered Iraq. And that's when you really started seeing conventional warfare right in the front of your own front steps, front of your house. So life was extremely difficult. However, my age I was really young at the time. I couldn't process the political aspects of things or what life was really like. Perhaps to me, as a child growing up in that environment, you feel there is an enemy attacking you and you don't know why they're attacking you. You feel that they really are interested in the little piece of sand you have in front of your house. And that's far away from the truth. The truth was you were living under a very crazy dictatorship regime that was horrible. But the older you get, you start getting to know about the government that's controlling you. And I guess things didn't make sense to me growing up as a child until it was about the age of 12 years old when I actually went to a prison, when I got detained and went to a Saddam prison. And that's really was the biggest change or the biggest turnaround in my whole in my life.
When you were 12,
12 years old. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
brother, when you were growing up and you saw all that, America's supposed to be the enemy. How did we heard that just American troops being an American, there was a lot of that out there. And I know that was a lot of the propaganda. It was to help start the extremists and start people standing up and fighting Americans coming in. How did you not get into that? How did you stay out of that? Was your family? What did they say? Hey, the Americans are good, the dictator's bad. Was it always?
Honestly, I didn't know the difference, Chris. Like I didn't know the difference. In Iraq at the time, you went to school and we had literally two classes we had to take. One of them was called nationalism. And one of them was the nationalism, and you really read about the Ba'ath Party history. Of course, they told you the good side of the Ba'ath Party. They never told you like how these criminals inspired by a communist party. And many people in the world, when they hear about Saddam or the Ba'ath Party, or they'd be like, oh, Saddam is a good guy, he kept terrorists out. They don't realize the Ba'ath Party was extremely inspired by Stalin. Saddam himself read every single book Stalin ever wrote, and Saddam actually executed exactly how Stalin executed his own generals. Saddam did it in 1980s, and then in the 80s against his own generals on the Iran-Iraq war. Saddam literally implemented an experiment of Stalin in Iraq, and this is the world you actually lived in. And at the time, you really didn't know the difference, right? Things doesn't make any sense to you. And I had no idea where really things were until I actually went to prison at age 12. And that's when I realized how vicious this regime is.
Why did they send you to prison? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering this. I was like, I have to hear how. I mean, because it's so foreign to us that a 12-year-old winds up in prison. It doesn't make it's just incomprehensible.
What's the story behind that, brother?
I mean, when you think about a regime like Saddam Hussein, I mean, a 12-year-old, that is absolutely nothing to what they have done in their crimes. They have killed babies who are not even born yet. They have done things that are, you would not be able to hear. But when I walked out of middle school at age 12 and I was going home, and at the time I really have not had encounters with Ba'ath Party members, which is like Saddam political party. And when we talk about political parties, it's not like we're talking about Republican and Democrats in the United States. But political party down there, we have one party and we have one candidate. That was Saddam Hussein. And the party had so much power that if they tell you to jump, you jump. And at a 12-year-old punk who didn't know the difference, there was something different about a Ba'ath Party member. They dress differently, they sound differently, and they're a lot cleaner than the people they walk around. So you have the ability, any normal citizen or average citizen will be able to tell about a Ba'ath Party member about a mile ago. I didn't have that filter because I was a 12-year-old. I didn't understand the difference. So when I got pulled over by 3 police officers at the time.
Pulled over. Are you driving?
No. Like it's just I'm walking.
Okay, I was like, holy, but I mean, not that I haven't seen a 12-year-old drive down the road on a. I have. Okay.
So like I got stopped, and the 3 police officers. The one thing I would never forget is 2 didn't look as clean and sharp. 1 looked absolutely completely different. Sounded completely different. He dressed differently. His badges on the uniform was differently. And clearly he was the leader of that crew. And he said to me, he said, "Do you have any money in your pocket?" And it was a weird question. I kind of felt like, okay, well, what if I have money? Like, what do you want to do with my money? It's my money. Like, what do you're supposed to be the police. They're there to protect the people. And the norm was if they ask you what you have in your pocket, they usually take it and you walk away and you don't say anything. So I had about what equals 600 dinars at the time. I kept half of it in my wallet, half of it in my socks, hoping that I don't get stolen, my wallet gets stolen or anything. And at the time, I was collecting money over holidays, Eids, and all these holidays we have down there, the Muslim holidays, to buy myself a shoe. And that was the whole goal. And he got out of the car and searched me, asked me to turn around where he can search me. And he searched me and he found my wallet and he opened it and he saw there was money in it. So I turned around and I tried to take my wallet back and he ended up slapping me. When he slapped me, he was a 6 foot tall. I was a 12-year-old little guy, skinny, that living under sanctions, not fed well. I fell on the ground and I cursed him. This was a big deal in our culture. If you curse somebody and with a thing, and I cursed him on his mom and his sister. And he grabbed me from my collar. He was bigger than me, a lot stronger. They opened the back door of that police patrol and they threw me inside. So I literally didn't walk or sit in that chair properly. I got thrown all the way to the other side of the patrol, and the 2 other guards sat right next to me. So they got in the car, and everything I was going through at the time, I kind of felt I was in deep shit and deep trouble. And I felt like in my heart, look, at the end of the day, he took my money. He hit me. Like, this could be a lesson learned. I could get beat up down the road and go home. And I will never forget, the car kept driving. And about 20 minutes, I obviously drove out of my neighborhood where I lived in that town. I was out of that town at that point. And I went in and I will never forget the conversation that went on between one of the guys that was sitting in my left and him sitting in the front. And the guy on my left was like around in his 50s. And he started talking to him, to the Ba'ath Party member who was sitting in the front. And he said, "Hey, he's just a child. You took his money. You slapped him. Just take him out of the car, beat him up, and let him go." And he turned around and he said, "If you keep talking, I'm going to throw you. I'm throwing him tonight." Wow. And the 50-year-old guy next to me went silent. So it drove about 45 minutes. I got to the front gate of the Iraqi Ministry of Interior, which I've never seen before my whole life. I have seen the checkpoint, but, average citizens of that regime, we're not allowed to look what's behind. You don't know what's really behind that checkpoint. And once I passed the guard, that was my first time in my life seeing what's really behind that checkpoint. And I drove about, they drove about a mile and a half, and I actually saw the Ministry of Interior to my left. And I've never seen this part of the country before. This is not where any citizen can drive by. This is completely a secluded area. And he took a right to what's looked like a compound. And all I remember from it is just high walls and a
Wow.
slide gate. And the slide gate opened and I went inside. And the first thing that I remember from looking in the car, there were cages and there was darkness behind the cages. I didn't see what it looked like. It actually reminded me of the zoo in Baghdad. And I just looked and I'm like, what is this? Like, what's this place? Is it like it looked like a zoo cage or a butcher store of some sort. And it was just a compound blocked by these big walls and towers. And you couldn't really tell what's inside. And he got out of the car, went into the room, and I stayed in the car. I was handcuffed and sitting in the car. And about 20 minutes, half an hour, he came over, opened the door. They got me out and they walked me to a table where he was sitting on it. And it looked like he was already actually writing a report. And he pushed the paper to me across the table. I was still handcuffed to the front of my body. He gave me a pen and he said, sign. And the whole report was written like it's a long, handwritten report. I have no idea what's in it. I only read the first sentence that stated I was an enemy of the state and I tried to assassinate a bath party while on duty.
Wow.
And I was asked to sign. And I'm looking, there are guards with actually sticks, look like a baseball bats in every corner. I'm terrified. And I signed it. I immediately signed it. I was hoping that was it. I'll go home. And immediately they took me to the side of the prison where the cages were. And I ended up being walking. And then immediately when they walked me in, I basically became on the other side of the fence. And I saw what looked like all concrete. And there was one little window, maybe the size of your hands, small window. And there was a metal gate. They opened the metal gate and they threw me inside. And it was a prison with about 500 people in it. It's like a war house. There was no rooms or anything. It's just a complete flat concrete floor. And there's about 500 people inside. And I just got thrown and pushed right inside and sat there. I was terrified that everybody there they're older than me. I was a kid. People were afraid to talk to me because they thought I was involved in some serious stuff to be there. And until about one of the prisoners, when they called my name, actually after half an hour, they called my name and I thought I was going to go home. And I was like, this is it. They try to scare me. Half an hour, I'm going home. So I get up and I have my books in my hands. Like literally, I couldn't afford to have a backpack. I had like literally books wrapped up in my hand, 4 or 5 books. And one of the prisoners tapped on my shoulders and he just looked at me and he said, hey, he said, scream as hard as you can where your voice will bother them or they won't let you go. And I didn't know what that meant. I couldn't process it. I said, what do you mean scream? Like they're calling me to go. And when I got out of the room, I got taken to the opposite side, which not where the side I came from. And there was a room there that's probably the size of a bathroom. I'm sure Chris remember what Iraqi bathrooms look like. They're small. And they had chains coming from the ceiling.
Wow.
And it looked like really like a butcher store. And the whole room was painted red. Once they closed that door, everything you're looking at is completely red with a dim light. And I couldn't understand what this was. And I was hanged from my legs upside down.
Wow.
From the ankles. And I started getting beaten and hit by basically what it is. It's a hose, like a water hose with a stick inside of it. Yeah. And the kicks were not just only to my back, it was actually to the back of my head. So I passed out within like maybe minutes. I was being talked to, and I couldn't understand the words they were saying to me. They were actually asking me what a group I am with. And I had no idea what the name of the resistance were. I had no idea what the group's names are. I really didn't know anything. I didn't know what to answer. I was waiting for them to give me something so I can say, yes, I'm part of this. So the beating stops. And I got thrown back into prison. Later on in life, I found out this actually torture technique they have taken out of an old Roman torture book that the Iraqi government has purchased and implemented these torture techniques. So the red was to psychologically breaks you down. Yeah. And whatever confession they'll put in your hands, you will absolutely sign on it. Once you go into that prison, you sign in all these papers. You meet. So basically, it was called the processing prison. It's where they process you. They get your confessions out. You get labeled as an enemy of the state, and then you get sent to trial to meet Awad al-Bender, who was Saddam Supreme Ba'ath Party Supreme Judge. This individual would separate people by 1,000 people, separate them by 500 each, and will basically flip a quarter and decide that 500 get executed immediately and 500 go to underground prison. So there was no trial. There's no way of knowing you were safe, you were innocent or not. You're just gonna either whatever this guy's gonna decide that day. That's where your destiny was. So I spent, long story short, I spent about 4 weeks in there.
Wow. Does your family know that you're in there? While this is going on. Do they?
So that's where the story's coming. Is the 300 dinars that I have kept in my socks the whole time has really saved my life. I gave this to one of the prisoners the first night when I was brought back from torture room, and he had a guard in the middle of the night. So it was about like a 12:30 at night, 1:30 in the morning. One of the guards who actually cleaned the commander of the prison office. This guy, the guard has the commander has a landline phone, and the guard would take money from the prisoners, or if they have money, if they have any kind of thing they can make him, or handmade things they can give him, he'll make a phone call. So they took the money, they gave it to the guard, and he asked me for my family landline number. And at the time, I'm praying that my family was not outside of the house looking for me.
Yeah.
And somebody would answer the phone. And luckily, he went there, made the phone call. My older brother, answered the phone. And he just told him, look, this is where your brother is. You didn't hear me telling you this. And that's all I can tell you, and hang the phone. So my family knew what prison that I was in. And they immediately came in and met with the commander of the prison. I didn't know this was going on the outside. And the commander of the prison said, well, if you guys will bring me extra amount of money, I will smash the reports, I will end the processing, and I'll let you take him out of here. By next week, if I don't have the money here in my office, his papers are sending out, and then he will be transferred on a prison truck to trial. And that's where most likely he will not be around, or you will never see him again. So my family brought the money. I didn't know this was happening in the outside. I'm sitting there in this prison giving confessions that I am the most dangerous killer in the world at age 12.
Wow.
And I come out, and I get asked out. And I thought usually I'm going to the left side where the torture rooms are, or where the interrogation room. And this time, actually, I got taken to the right side where I came from at the beginning of entering that prison. So when I got taken to the right side, I didn't know what was happening in the outside. If my family knew where I was, none of that was privileged to me. And in the way the prisoners looked at me, I just felt this was it. I thought like that was my death, that I was going to get taken to outside of that little area outside of the cages, and somehow I might get shot.
Sure.
I might, and I just thought it was it. And in a way, I was relieved, because the torture and the beating and everything I was going through, the adults couldn't endure that.
Did you have to, Hamody?
Yeah.
Did you have to, was that a regular thing with the beatings, or once you signed and gave your confession, they just let you in, you stewed in the holding area?
Oh, that was a regular thing. It was on schedule.
Yeah,
it was on schedule. You had every day, and then every 2 days, and they bring you back and they enhance the confessions. And at the time, I had no idea what I was being told. Sure. I was agreeing with the interrogator. And the one thing I never forgot is there was a bald man, probably in his 60s, in that prison as a prisoner. And I will never forget that the man, the one scene from that prison is the man had a lighter. And the lighter, he would turn it on and he will put it on his forehead. And I had no idea why this person was doing that until about one of the prisoners have said to me that this person actually came to prison a normal person. He came to prison a normal person. He has lost his brain.
Yeah.
And he's been here for like years.
Wow.
And all he does, he would take this basically lighter and he would turn it all around his head. And I was amazed in my head. I was amazed is how is this person actually not feeling the heat of the lighter? Yeah. And I was just kind of like taken back into what I've seen. And when I got taken to that right side of the prison, I was done at that point. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to say anything. And I was told to look down. And I would never forget is I can feel the slide gate that I came from was right in front of me, but I couldn't look at it. I'm ordered to look down, and I was handcuffed to the back, and I started feeling the key of the handcuffs come through my arms, and he opened my handcuff. He opened it, and someone came close to my ears and said, "Walk and do not look behind." And I walked, literally, and as soon as I walked, they opened the slide gate, and I saw my dad. Literally, that was it, and I couldn't look behind. And part of me is like still processing is the prisoners who were there with me, I kind of have an attachment with them. And I was looking like, am I leaving out of this place? This is all it? And does the people know inside that I'm actually leaving, that I'm not actually getting shot at? And I just walked out of that door, and I was in a shocking moment. I didn't say anything to my dad. I didn't say a word. Wow. I really saw my dad. My dad put me in the car, and I drove away. Got home. I was taken to a doctor to treat my wounds in my back. I was hit to the head multiple times. The first person I talked to was my mother, and I just couldn't really tell them what I saw in there.
Were they at the time like angry with you for speaking back to a Ba'ath Party member?
Oh, my dad was.
Yeah,
my dad was, and I just didn't know what to tell my dad at the time. Like I just didn't know what to say to him. He was mad, and what they said to me is, here's 600 Iraqi dinars. Keep him in your pocket, and if anybody asks you anything again, you give him this money, and you do not say a word.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what I was told. And I went back to school about 3 days after, and I had no interest in any of my school. I went from being an A student, being so good at chemistry and physiology and in English. I just didn't care. I failed everything, including Islamic religion. Yeah. And I just didn't care, and I really didn't. I was just showing up in there. And most of my teachers were actually members of the Ba'ath Party.